Vietnam, a promising destination for investors. Future prospect of industrial real estate sector in Vietnam. Hello and welcome to this edition of Bizline brought to you by VTV International. You're with me, Lina, Pham. And as usual, we'll begin our program by reviewing the economic highlights over the past week. Vietnam has gradually earned more investor confidence and trust from businesses around the world, according to Cushman & Wakefield's latest rankings of the world's top spearheading economies. The list is part of the real estate firm's latest research on global risk assessment in 2017. Vietnam currently holds the second place on the list, having convinced many investors about the favorable investment conditions in the country. Not only does the economic report test the 30 biggest economies in the world, but it also includes the top 10 spearheading economies. These economies are not necessarily leaders in total GDP, but show the most prospects for manufacturing firms. The U.S.-ASEAN Business Council said Vietnam was among the most attractive economies in ASEAN for U.S. businesses at a press conference on Monday in Hanoi. The press conference marked an annual visit of the U.S.-ASEAN Business Council senior delegation, which was in the country to look for business opportunities from March 6 to March 9th. The 30-strong business delegation with representatives from the medical, technology, agriculture, food and car manufacturing sectors met ministries and authorities to propose recommendations to improve Vietnam's business climate. Delegation representatives said that U.S. firms judged the attractiveness and competitiveness of Vietnam based on its business climate, regardless of the U.S. withdrawal from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. According to a recent report on trade turnover in 2016 by General Department of Customs, last year marks the 10th year Vietnam joined the World Trade Organization, or WTO. Since then, total import-export turnover of Vietnam has increased 4 times, surpassing $350 billion. According to the General Department of Customs, the growth of trade turnover is evident of the high economy's openness in Vietnam. Vietnam currently has 28 export markets and 21 import markets, with turnovers reaching $1 billion. Despite this, many traditional export sectors such as coffee, tea, pepper, rubber, crude oil, rice are facing difficulties. The recent export surplus is due to the high value of exports in electronic products, processing, machinery, equipment, and footwear. According to DealStreetAsia.com, a website for Asian startups, in 2016, the total investment in Vietnamese startups reached $250 million. That's an increase of 60% compared to the previous year. More than 60% of the deals come from venture capital funds, 30% are from M&A, and the rest belong to private equity firms. 500 startups, Cyber Agent Ventures, and Gobi Partners were considered to be the leading investors in startup projects in Vietnam last year. There was also a significant development of accelerators, which has funded millions of dollars for those newly established companies. Vietnamese women are making their mark and gaining further ground in the business sector. The country currently has the highest percentage of female CEOs at 25% in the Asia-Pacific region. This is according to a recent report from the Conference for Female Leaders in Banking and IT Sectors in Hanoi. The report's statistics reflected that Vietnam has a higher ratio of females in CEO positions than the world's average of 10%. According to a survey conducted by the Internations Organization, the world's largest network for people living and working abroad, Vietnam is one of the 5 countries and territories that has the lowest cost of living for foreigners. Accordingly, the price of food and transportation are the factors that helped Vietnam rank fourth on the list. Meanwhile, according to statistics on a website of Hopas Airport, the average cost to pay for services in Ho Chi Minh City is over $65. The city ranked 14 out of 19 tourist destinations that have the lowest cost of living in the world. And that's it for the economic highlights over the past week. Up next, we'll talk about future prospect of industrial real estate sector in Vietnam in our crosstalk. According to the latest statistics, foreign direct investment in real estate in February 2017 reached $345.5 million, a 12-fold increase over the same period in 2016. Key projects are in the industrial real estate sector, with the establishment or renting of industrial zones to serve manufacturing production activities. This trend of investing in industrial real estate and warehouse infrastructure has continued the trend from the end of 2016, when indicators of Vietnam's economic growth are constantly improving. To learn more about the wave of investment in industrial real estate in Vietnam, we've invited to our studio today Mr. Greg Ohan, Director of Jones Lang LaSalle in Vietnam. But before we start our discussion, let's watch the following clip to understand more about the overview of the industrial real estate sector in Vietnam.
Vietnam has 325 industrial parks or IPs, according to the latest report of the Ministry of Planning and Investment. 220 IPs have gone into operation with an occupancy rate of 73%, the highest rate ever. The Southeast topped the list with 111 IPs, followed by the Northern region with 85 IPs and the Mekong Delta region with 52 IPs.
Thời gian trước đây thì phát triển nhiều về số lượng, nhưng dần dần khi thị trường phát triển lên cũng như là theo cái nhịp gia tăng của FDI, các cái đòi hỏi nó cao hơn thì dẫn đến là về chất hơn. Giả sử như việc là hạ tầng phải làm như thế nào để đạt tiêu chuẩn cho các cái khách, không chỉ khách trong nước mà khách quốc tế.
According to CBRE, in the past 5 years, the ready-built factory segment has been in higher demand in Vietnam, with a strong growth rate of about 10 to 12% per year. Investment trends in industrial parks have also seen a shift.
Cái nhu cầu đầu tư vào khu công nghiệp Việt Nam đã dịch chuyển từ cái hướng là gia công xuất khẩu về may mặc, da giày, xuất khẩu về nông sản, chuyển dịch dần dần sang đến xuất khẩu gia công những cái mặt hàng mà có cái hàm lượng công nghệ cao hơn.
Notable industrial real estate developers in Vietnam include Vicalasera Infrastructure Investment Development Company, Vietnam Singapore Industrial Park Joint Venture Company Limited, Amata Corporation, Thailand's biggest industrial real estate developer, and Dinh Vui Development Joint Venture Company, among others.
Mr. Greg Ohan, thank you very much for joining our Bizline program today.
Good to be here.
Yeah. So our first question is, can you give an overview evaluation about the real estate, the industrial real estate sector in Vietnam?
So if an investor is looking to come into Vietnam and wants to open a factory or rent a warehouse, they need to look at designated industrial zones and industrial parks. And that segment of the real estate market's grown significantly over the last 5 to 6 years, but more so the sophistication in what local developers are offering manufacturers and investors looking for a location has significantly improved.
So who are the key players in this sector in Vietnam now?
Key players traditionally were always local, and they just simply offered land for manufacturers to come buy and build a factory, but that's changed. In the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen investors from Singapore, investors from Taiwan, investors from Japan, and investors from Korea working alongside local industrial developers and offering new industrial parks. So a large part of the industrial real estate providers are local because they have the land, but now we're seeing more and more partnerships between foreign groups and local industrial park developers.
So have the local suppliers satisfied the demand of foreign manufacturers?
Look, it really depends. Some have come close. But I think the key aspect is when a foreign manufacturer first came to Vietnam 15 years ago, they were really just buying land in an industrial zone and building a factory themselves. There was little infrastructure, there was little support. What we're starting to see now is local and foreign industrial park developers offering an integrated service offering to manufacturers. So many of the new industrial parks now are not just land to buy and build a factory. They offer an integrated commercial component, residential component, factories for rent, warehouses for rent.
By the end of February 2017, Samsung Display Vietnam poured an additional $2.5 billion into its expansion project in Yên Phong Industrial Park, Bắc Ninh Province, developed by Viklaserra Infrastructure Investment Development Company, a leading local IPs developer. Eyeing the potential of the industrial estate sector, Viklaserra has been investing strongly in a number of projects such as Yên Phong Industrial and Urban Area, Phú Hạ Industrial Zone, Tiên Sơn Industrial Zone Parts 1 and 2, and the Phong Điền Industrial Park. The industrial parks that are for lease bring the firm 38.5% of its total profit. Viklaserra is just one among many local developers in Vietnam that is re-upping huge profits from industrial real estate.
Bản thân họ cũng đang trở thành đối trọng rất mạnh đối với cả các cái doanh nghiệp nước ngoài. Nếu mà chúng ta nhìn thấy những cái khách thuê có thể nói là lớn nhất hiện nay cũng là đang nằm trong tay các nhà phát triển bất động sản công nghiệp trong nước.
Đa phần các khu công nghiệp hiện tại Việt Nam vẫn được đầu tư phát triển bởi các nhà đầu tư Việt Nam trong nước. Một cái lý do cũng là lý do lịch sử là các nhà đầu tư Việt Nam thì có tiếp cận được cái nguồn đất từ sớm tốt hơn, thì họ sẽ có những cái lợi thế về mặt có thể giúp đỡ được các đơn vị thuê đất hoặc là thuê nhà xưởng trong cái quá trình làm thủ tục xin giấy phép có thể là tương đối thuận lợi và dễ dàng hơn.
Along with these advantages, local developers are also improving their infrastructure to meet the standards of foreign investors. Thus, the occupancy rate is going up.
When we first came here, high-tech firms were few, yet after only 2 years, about 30 enterprises of this kind have invested in this IP.
Locally developed IPs account for over 85% of total IPs nationwide, according to a report by the Ministry of Planning and Investment in 2016.
So what's your recommendations for local suppliers to improve their services?
The one thing manufacturers or investors look for when they come to a market like Vietnam, there's a little bit of risk. So one of the biggest concerns is managing risk and having flexibility. So what local developers can do, they can try and understand that concern. So what they can offer is a more flexible offering. So what we're starting to see is local developers not just saying, here's a piece of land, build a factory, but they're providing what we call incubation space. So a small factory to rent for 1 to 2 years, or a warehouse, then the ability to grow. So flexibility in terms of operation. The other is an integrated offering. So many of these industrial parks are not in the most desirable locations in terms of CBD and proximity to amenities, food. So what some of the industrial park operators are doing is offering housing, retail, F&B, somewhere to eat, somewhere to live. You know, creating a more desirable environment, a more integrated community rather than just a factory location.
So how does the involvement of foreign suppliers affect the growth of this sector in Vietnam?
Firstly, what it does is it creates competition. And as you know, competition leads to better terms and conditions for the people who are going to benefit. So what it's done is it's brought sophistication, it's brought a flight to quality in terms of what they're offering. So for example, what's happening now is as we see, say, Singaporean partners, Japanese groups come in, they do one of two things. One, they encourage investment from that particular country. So if we look at Vietnamese industrial parks that have Japanese partners, you'll see a heavy concentration of Japanese investors. The same with Singaporean, the same with Taiwanese. So it encourages investment or inflow from those markets. What it also does is it brings some of the sophistication and processes that those markets use to Vietnam. And in the end, that just benefits Vietnam in general and local developers. And lastly, what it does, it also offers more a broader offering and flexibility, like we mentioned before. So the main thing is it makes Vietnam more competitive, and it provides manufacturers, especially foreigners, with a real comparable option versus if they were looking at Indonesia or the Philippines or Malaysia. Because that's the key thing. If a big manufacturer is looking at Vietnam, they're also looking at our neighbours. So we need to make sure what we offer is just as good or even better. And that's what we're starting to see with these local and international partnerships.
So maybe can you elaborate more about the partnership between the local and the foreign suppliers?
Sure. The reason why we're seeing more partnership is because the requirements of manufacturers are starting to get more sophisticated. They're wanting more, they're expecting more. So as Vietnam grows, manufacturers looking to open factories here or to enter the market are comparing Vietnam to our ASEAN neighbours, to other Southeast Asian markets. So what we're starting to see is international groups coming in, be it Singaporean, Japanese, providing more higher quality services in combination with local developers. So better infrastructure, better supporting services, better quality incubation space, which is warehouses or factories.
Founded in 2010, the Vietnam-Singapore Industrial Park, or VSIP, in Hải Phòng province boasts an area of 1,600 hectares. As of September 2016, it attracted $1.23 billion in a cumulative foreign direct investment, or FDI, with 34 projects.
One of the key things that I think has managed to bring up Hải Phòng City is the very special economic zone, special economic zone economic policy, where they give tax incentives to foreign direct investments.
We will have a long-term, development here, and we will have now we have two factories, and then within 3 years we have another two.
VSIP Hải Phòng is one of 7 VSIPs across North, Central and South of Vietnam, including Bình Dương, Bắc Ninh, Hải Phòng, Quảng Ngãi, Hải Dương and Nghệ An province. Recently, the latest project, which covers 1,000 hectares in the southern province of Bình Dương, was the biggest among the 11 FDI property projects in Vietnam in February 2017.
Chúng tôi đang cùng với các bạn Singapore làm việc để chuyển cái mức độ hợp tác lên mức độ cao hơn. Bây giờ là thay vì là chỉ là Industry Park thì họ sẽ có Innovation Park. Họ đang thúc đẩy cái khu công nghiệp sáng tạo đấy ở tại thành phố Hà Nội và tại thành phố Hồ Chí Minh, có thể xem xét mở ra ở thành phố Đà Nẵng.
So far, VSIP Group has attracted a total investment of $9 billion. Apart from VSIP, other significant foreign industrial real estate operators include Amata, a Thai company, and Mapletree, owned by Singaporean investors.
So what challenges are international foreign suppliers facing in Vietnam?
Look, Vietnam is a big, long country. So the biggest challenge for many is where to begin. The second is labor. Where is the labor pool and where is the skilled labor pool? Depending on the type of industry. So, a big handset manufacturer is going to need a lot of people to sit there and assemble phones. Whereas if it's, say, an automotive manufacturer, it's largely mechanic. So depending on the industry, labor. The other challenges or the other concerns for many manufacturers is understanding government policy in terms of taxation, in terms of incentives as well. But mainly, the main challenge is, for many, finding the right partner, finding the right industrial park that's going to give them not just a need or an offering for the short term, but also something that's going to help them grow. The biggest challenge we face for manufacturers coming to Vietnam is within 5 to 10 years, they've either outgrown their space and they need more, or they don't remain in the market. So it's normally one way or the other.
Does the uncertain future of the TPP affect the demand of the industrial real estate sector in Vietnam in the coming time?
The positive aspect of the TPP is it put Vietnam on the spotlight. It encouraged us to be a little bit more competitive in terms of what we did. But will TPP affect Vietnam in terms of investment? Probably not. Long-term, TPP was something pivoting Vietnam towards working closely with the United States. I think we might see manufacturers from other markets now looking at Vietnam, manufacturers from markets where we're working closer with in the region. So what I think we're going to see more of is more manufacturers from our neighbors, from companies who are operating in China, not necessarily Chinese organizations, but organizations in Indonesia and Malaysia looking to expand and looking to come into Vietnam.
What factors that set Vietnam's industrial real estate sector apart from the global norms?
One of the biggest drivers of why manufacturers are looking to Vietnam as opposed to our neighbors is cost. Firstly, labor cost. The average non-farm wage rate is approximately $600 a month. So labor cost is significantly cheaper than our neighbors. The other is land. One of the drivers here, we look at the average land cost versus our Southeast Asian neighbors in Indonesia, Singapore, Philippines, Malaysia. We're much lower, not significantly lower, but lower. Other factors as well is some government policies. So Vietnam has a big shift towards the high-tech sector. So we have two high-tech parks, one in the north, Hoa Lac, another one in the south, Saigon High-Tech Park. So government policy is one, but also labor. What we tend to find manufacturers believe in Vietnam labor. They believe the Vietnamese staff are generally high working, have a reasonably high literacy rate. So these are also some of the factors contributing to making Vietnam more attractive compared to our regional neighbors.
The industrial estate sector is benefiting from the wave of foreign investment. To enhance profitability, industrial park developers need to scrutinize the needs of investors to provide sufficient services.
Foreign companies seeking to invest in Vietnam when they're looking for a real estate location need to look at a number of aspects that relate to their business plans, where they can best manufacture the product, such things as supply of water, electricity, security and what have you. Natural catastrophes is the zone exposed to such things as storm, flood, which is actually quite a common thing in Vietnam.
Logistics services to ensure smooth goods transportation are of interest to investors.
Trên tất cả các địa phương phát triển về khu công nghiệp thì chúng ta thấy rằng là cơ sở hạ tầng rất là được đẩy mạnh. Một loạt các cái tuyến đường cao tốc đều đã được xây dựng và hoàn thành. Từ ví dụ như là Hà Nội, Hải Phòng, tuyến cao tốc Hà Nội Lào Cai, từ Hải Phòng xuống Quảng Ninh cũng sắp xong trong năm 2017.
Besides logistics services, the construction of residential and commercial areas also play an important role.
Hiện tại thì có thể là có những người mà sống ở Hà Nội và đi làm tại Bắc Ninh, hoặc là công nhân phải thuê nhà trọ, mà những cái diện tích nhà trọ có thể là cái yêu cầu cơ bản có thể là chưa được đáp ứng chẳng hạn, thì có lẽ là trong tương lai sẽ có những cái mô hình nhà ở để phục vụ cho những người làm việc tại các khu công nghiệp, mà theo đánh giá của chúng tôi là những cái nhu cầu này hiện nay đang khá là lớn, và cái nguồn cung để đáp ứng hiện tại là mới chỉ đang tương đối là ở nhỏ lẻ và tự phát.
Only about 20% of the total number of workers in IPs have stable housing, according to the Housing and Real Estate Market Management Agency, under the Ministry of Construction.
So how does the industrial real estate sector in Vietnam perform compared to other neighboring countries in the ASEAN?
Look, we put a lot of emphasis on the industrial sector here, particularly if you look at FDI. Almost 3/4 of FDI last year was in industrial manufacturing. That's a good thing. If you're looking at FDI in 2005, 2006, a lot of it was in real estate and golf courses. So we're seeing a more sustainable amount of FDI, and a lot of that's because people have a strong opinion of the industrial market in Vietnam. But if we compare ourselves to our neighbours, we're still in the infancy stage. So how do we compare to our neighbours? Depending on which neighbour we talk about. If we look at markets like China, it's got very sophisticated. They've moved from highly labour-intensive manufacturing to more high-tech. So if we compare to China, where we're seeing a lot of companies now hedge against and move operations here, Vietnam is much more cost-effective. So in that respect, for textiles, manufacturing, clothing, more lower to mid-end, in that sector, we're very competitive. If we compare ourselves to the high-tech sector, we still have room to grow. Vietnam is targeting the high-tech sector. Intel has its largest campus globally here. Samsung has its largest campus outside Korea. But if we're looking at the small to medium-sized sector, there's still a way to go. So if we compare ourselves to markets like the Philippines, we're behind but improving. So generally, compared to our neighbours, Vietnam is a cost-effective and stable environment for manufacturing, and that's why we're starting to see a steady increase of more risk-averse investors like Japanese in the small to medium sector and the large sector.
So could you please give us a forecast about the growth of the industrial real estate sector in Vietnam in the coming time? Does it follow the global trend?
I think what we're seeing in Southeast Asia, in ASEAN, is we're seeing our own trend. The global trend is going in one direction, and Southeast Asia's trend is pursuing another direction. Vietnam particularly. So, if you look at industrial output as a percentage of GDP growth, in other markets in Europe and America, it's on a downward trend. But if you look at Vietnam and Southeast Asia, it's increasing. So what we expect to see is more industrial output, particularly in Vietnam, and we expect that growth here to be aligned with the region.
Once again, thank you very much for joining our Bizline program today.
Thank you.
Economic stability is believed to be an important factor to boost investors' confidence in the industrial real estate industry. This sector is closely related to the manufacturing sector, which is expected to be the main key driver for the growth of Vietnam's economy. The good news is land prices, rental rates have been stable for a long time in Vietnam. The capacity to match supply and demand is also forecast to be sustained in the near future. However, to further enhance profitability, investors suggest better connection of industrial zones with main transport access, creating easier and more effective transportation of goods. Localities also need to find solutions to stimulate residential and commercial urban areas to attract people to live there, thus creating more added values. And that also wraps up this edition of Bizline. Thank you very much for watching. You can always rewatch our program at vtv4.vn or youtube.com/vtv4go. Thanks for watching and see you next time.